Sometimes, people judge others based on appearance, assuming status or importance without knowing the full story. This is exactly what happened when Michelle Buteau, a successful comedian and actress, checked into a high-end hotel for a weekend getaway. The receptionist, blinded by assumptions, treated her with blatant disrespect. But what he didn't know was that Michelle wasn't just another guest. Her response would soon leave everyone speechless. Stay tuned as this story unfolds. The sun had barely set when Michelle Buteau arrived at the luxurious Grand Crest Hotel. Dressed in her signature casual chic style, she stepped out of the car with a confident smile, her suitcase rolling behind her. The hotel lobby was lavish, decorated with sparkling chandeliers and plush velvet furniture. But none of that mattered to Michelle. She was here for a well-deserved break, a weekend of peace after weeks of non-stop work. She walked up to the reception desk, where a young man in a neatly pressed uniform barely spared her a glance before shifting his focus back to his computer. Michelle cleared her throat. "Hey there. Checking in, Michelle Buteau. Should be under a reservation for the executive suite." The receptionist, Ryan, barely looked up. Are you sure you're at the right place?" he asked, his tone filled with condescension. Michelle raised an eyebrow. "Pretty sure. Booked it weeks ago. Should be under Buteau. B-U-T-U. Ryan sighed, his fingers lazily tapping the keyboard. One moment. He skimmed through the system, then let out a small chuckle. "Yeah, I'm not seeing a reservation under that name. Are you sure you didn't book a room at one of our sister hotels? There might be more within your range." Michelle's lips parted slightly in surprise. Within her range? Was he serious? Before she could respond, Ryan continued, "We cater to a certain clientele here. Our executive suites are typically reserved for, well, high-profile guests." Michelle folded her arms. "Oh, is that so? And what kind of guests would that be?" Ryan smirked, finally making full eye contact. "People who belong here." Michelle let out a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. She knew exactly what was happening. The dismissive glance, the assumption that she didn't fit in, the condescending tone. It was all too familiar. But instead of arguing, she decided to play along. "Interesting," she said, tilting her head. "So, you decide who belongs here?" Ryan shrugged. "I just follow protocol, ma'am." Michelle nodded slowly, then reached for her phone. "Great. Let's see how that protocol holds up." She scrolled through her emails, pulling up the confirmation receipt for her booking. Just as she was about to show it to Ryan, a well-dressed manager walked by, his expression shifting the moment he saw her. Ryan noticed the sudden change in the manager's demeanor and stiffened. "Mr. Hayes, can I help you with something?" The manager, a tall man with an air of authority, looked from Michelle to Ryan, then back to Michelle. "Ms. Buteau, I had no idea you were arriving this evening. Welcome to the Grand Crest Hotel." His voice was warm, professional, and full of respect, nothing like Ryan's condescending tone. Michelle smiled, slipping her phone back into her pocket. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes." Though, it seems like there was a bit of confusion at the front desk. Mr. Hayes turned to Ryan, his smile fading. "Confusion?" Ryan swallowed hard, shifting uncomfortably. "I was just verifying her reservation." The manager's eyes narrowed. "Michelle Buteau is one of our VIP guests. Her suite was prepared in advance. Why was there any verifying needed?" Ryan stammered. I wasn't aware. That's because you didn't check properly," Mr. Hayes interrupted, his voice firm. "Ms. Buteau, please allow me to personally escort you to your suite." Michelle turned to Ryan with a knowing smile. "Looks like I do belong here after all." As she followed Mr. Hayes toward the elevators, Ryan stood frozen behind the desk, his face pale. He had made a terrible mistake. Michelle stepped into the grand elevator with Mr. Hayes, the polished chrome walls reflecting the smirk still playing on her lips. The moment the doors closed, he let out a sigh. "I sincerely apologize for that, Ms. Buteau. That is not the level of service we pride ourselves on." Michelle waved a hand. "Oh, don't worry, I've seen worse. But I do wonder, how often does that kind of thing happen here?" Mr. Hayes hesitated. "We strive for excellence, but unconscious bias does creep in. And unfortunately, some employees let their assumptions override professionalism." Michelle nodded thoughtfully. "I see. Well, let's make this an experience no one forgets. Mr. Hayes gave her a curious look, but said nothing as the elevator reached the penthouse floor. The doors slid open to reveal a stunning suite, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a breathtaking city skyline. Michelle walked in, appreciating the lavish decor, but her mind was already forming a plan. Meanwhile, back at the front desk, Ryan was still reeling from the confrontation. He glanced nervously at his co-workers, who were whispering among themselves. One of them, a young woman named Sarah, nudged him. "Dude, you really messed up. You know who she is, right?" Ryan gritted his teeth. Yeah, I get it now." Sarah shook her head. "No, you don't. She's not just a celebrity. She's connected. Like big time. I heard she has investments in luxury businesses. You might have just disrespected someone who could buy this place if she wanted to." Ryan swallowed hard. If that was true, he had done more than just offend a guest. He might have jeopardized his job. Up in the suite, Michelle picked up her phone. She had an idea, one that would ensure this experience left a lasting impact. Not just on Ryan, but on the entire hotel staff. She dialed a number, waiting as the line rang. "Hey, it's Michelle. You still in town? I need a favor." The next morning, Michelle woke up to a breathtaking sunrise over the city skyline. But today wasn't just about relaxation. It was about making a statement. As she sipped her coffee, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her friend, Jason Carter, a well-known hospitality investor. "Landed. Let's shake things up." A smile tugged at Michelle's lips. Jason was perfect for this plan. He wasn't just any investor. He had the power to turn a struggling business into a five-star empire, or to shut it down. Meanwhile, downstairs, Ryan was visibly nervous. Every interaction at the front desk felt tense, as if the entire hotel staff was watching him. He had replayed the events in his head 100 times, regretting every word he had said to Michelle. Mr. Hayes approached the front desk. "Ryan, we need to have a meeting in an hour. Be ready." Ryan nodded, his stomach churning. Meetings like this rarely ended well. At precisely noon, Michelle strolled into the hotel's executive lounge, where Jason and Mr. Hayes were already seated. Ryan was called in shortly after, his face pale. When he saw Jason, his throat went dry. He recognized him immediately. Jason leaned back in his chair, eyeing Ryan carefully. "So, Ryan, I hear we had a little misunderstanding yesterday." Ryan swallowed. Yes, sir. I made a mistake." Michelle crossed her arms. "A big one. But here's the thing. I don't believe in just punishing people. I believe in lessons." Ryan blinked. "Lessons?" Jason smirked. "That's right. Michelle and I have come up with an interesting way for you to learn." Ryan had no idea what was coming next, but he could tell this wasn't going to be just a slap on the wrist. Jason leaned forward. "For the next week, you're not going to be a receptionist. You're going to be a guest." Ryan's brows furrowed. "What?" Michelle nodded. "You're going to check into this hotel and experience exactly what it's like to be treated based on appearances. No special treatment. No one will know who you are." Ryan's mouth opened, but no words came out. He had no choice but to comply. Ryan had always thought he understood customer service. He had been working in hospitality for years, after all. But as he sat in the hotel lobby, now as a guest rather than a receptionist, he felt something he hadn't before: powerlessness. Dressed casually, without the polished uniform of the front desk, he was met with a completely different level of service. The same co-workers who had once greeted him with respect now barely acknowledged him. When he approached the desk to ask a question, the receptionist gave him a brief glance before turning back to their computer, muttering, "Just a moment, sir." Minutes passed, then more minutes. Ryan felt his patience wearing thin. He cleared his throat. "Excuse me?" The receptionist sighed. "Sir, as I said, just a moment." Ryan clenched his jaw. He had done this exact thing to guests before, assuming that some people were less important than others. But now that he was on the receiving end, he realized how frustrating it felt. He finally got his room key and headed upstairs. When he stepped into his suite, he was shocked to find that it hadn't been properly cleaned. There were used towels in the bathroom, an unmade bed, and an empty coffee cup sitting on the desk. He immediately called housekeeping. "Yes, sir," a tired voice answered. "My room hasn't been cleaned properly." I like it taken care of immediately. A pause. Then, sir, our housekeeping team is very busy. We'll send someone when we can. Ryan frowned. This is unacceptable. I'm a paying guest, and so are 100 other people. The voice cut in, sounding annoyed. You'll have to wait. Ryan's stomach twisted. He had said these same words before, dismissing complaints without a second thought. But now, he felt disrespected. Invisible, he sat on the edge of the bed, running a hand over his face. He had never realized how small moments of neglect and bias could shape someone's entire experience. Meanwhile, Michelle was watching everything unfold from behind the scenes. She had instructed the staff to give Ryan the full experience. No special treatment, no favors. And it was working. By the third day, Ryan was eating alone in the hotel restaurant when a well-dressed businessman walked in. The waitstaff immediately greeted the man with smiles, rushing to seat him at the best table. Ryan, on the other hand, had been waiting for nearly 15 minutes just to get a menu. A waitress finally approached. Sorry for the wait. What can I get you? Why did that man get seated immediately? Ryan asked, pointing toward the businessman. The waitress glanced over and shrugged. Regular guest. He spends a lot here. Ryan sighed. So, I don't matter as much because I'm not spending enough? The waitress hesitated, then gave a small, guilty smile. I'm just following the way things are done. Ryan nodded slowly. It wasn't just him. It was a mindset, a system. Later that evening, Michelle called him to the executive lounge. When he arrived, she was waiting with Jason Carter, both of them watching him expectantly. Well, Michelle asked, tilting her head. How's your stay been? Ryan exhaled. Eye-opening. Jason smirked. Do tell. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. I thought I understood how guests felt, but I didn't. I had no idea how much small things, being ignored, being dismissed, could make someone feel less. Michelle leaned forward. And now? Ryan met her gaze. Now I know that respect isn't about who someone appears to be. It's about how you treat everyone. Michelle smiled. Good. Because tomorrow, you're going back to the front desk. And I expect to see a very different Ryan. Ryan nodded. He wouldn't just be different, he'd be better. The next morning, Ryan stood in front of the hotel's grand entrance, straightening his uniform. Today was different. Today, he was returning to his post, but not as the same person who had once judged guests by their appearance. As he stepped behind the front desk, his co-workers shot his curious glances. They had heard about his guest experience, though no one dared to say anything directly. Sarah, however, couldn't hold back. So, how was it? She whispered, raising an eyebrow. Enjoy being on the other side? Ryan let out a breath. Let's just say, it was humbling. Sarah smirked. Good. Maybe now you'll actually listen to people instead of brushing them off. Ryan didn't argue. Instead, he focused on the first guest who approached the desk, a woman with 2 young children, looking exhausted. He noticed how tense her shoulders were, how her grip tightened around her small rolling suitcase. The old Ryan might have sighed impatiently, assuming she'd be difficult. But today, he saw her differently. Good morning, ma'am, he said warmly. Welcome to the Majestic Hotel. How can I assist you today? The woman blinked, clearly surprised by the sincerity in his tone. We had a reservation, but our flight was delayed. I'm just hoping we can check in early. My kids are exhausted. Ryan quickly checked the system. Let me see what I can do. He glanced up with a smile. I'll find you a clean room as soon as possible. In the meantime, would your kids like some juice? We have a comfortable lounge area they can relax in while we sort this out. The woman's eyes softened, and for the first time, she looked at him with gratitude rather than frustration. That would be amazing. Thank you. As Ryan arranged for the room to be prioritized, Michelle watched from a distance. She had been keeping an eye on him, curious to see if the lesson had truly sunk in. So far, it seemed like it had. Later that afternoon, Michelle and Jason Carter sat down with Ryan in a private office. Jason leaned back in his chair. All right, Ryan, tell me what you've learned. Ryan exhaled, choosing his words carefully. I used to think that hospitality was about efficiency, checking people in, following protocol, keeping things moving. But now I realize it's about making people feel valued. No one should have to prove they're important to deserve basic respect. Michelle nodded approvingly. And do you think you can keep up this new mindset? Not just today, but every day? Ryan met her gaze. Yes, because now I know how it feels to be overlooked. I won't make that mistake again. Jason exchanged a glance with Michelle before turning back to Ryan. Good answer. Now, I have one last challenge for you. Ryan tensed. What kind of challenge? Michelle smiled. You'll see soon enough. Ryan's heart pounded as he stood in the middle of the hotel's grand banquet hall. Michelle and Jason had led him here without explanation, and now he was surrounded by hotel staff, executives, and even a few VIP guests. A podium stood at the front, and Jason walked toward it with a confident stride. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason began, his voice carrying through the hall. We are constantly striving to improve the hospitality experience at the Majestic Hotel. Today, we want to highlight the importance of humility, respect, and growth within our team. And to do that, we have a special guest. Ryan swallowed hard as Michelle stepped forward. Everyone, meet Ryan, one of our front desk receptionists, she announced with a smile. Ryan has recently undergone an unexpected, yet invaluable, lesson in hospitality. And now, we'd like him to share what he's learned. The room erupted into murmurs. Ryan's throat went dry. A speech? In front of all these people? He looked at Michelle, but she simply nodded, urging him forward. Taking a deep breath, he walked to the podium. The microphone amplified even the smallest sounds. His breathing, the slight shuffle of his shoes. He cleared his throat. Hi, everyone, he began, gripping the podium tightly. I won't lie. I didn't expect to be standing here today. A light chuckle rippled through the audience, easing his nerves slightly. He took another breath and continued. I've worked at the Majestic Hotel for a while now. I used to think my job was all about efficiency, getting guests checked in, making sure the system ran smoothly, and following protocols. What I didn't realize was that I was missing the heart of hospitality. I was making judgments about people based on appearances. He glanced at Michelle, who gave him an encouraging nod. But then, I had the privilege of meeting someone who showed me that true hospitality isn't about checking names off a list. It's about making people feel valued, regardless of their status, their clothes, or how they carry themselves. I learned the hard way that a simple act of kindness can completely change someone's experience. Ryan scanned the room, meeting the eyes of his coworkers. I made a mistake, but I'm standing here today because mistakes can be lessons if you let them be. I want to be the kind of person who uplifts others, not dismisses them. And I hope that everyone in this room, whether you work at the front desk, in housekeeping, or in management, remembers that too. Because respect should never be optional. Silence filled the room for a brief moment. Then, applause erupted. Ryan felt a rush of relief as the tension drained from his body. Jason stepped up beside him, giving his shoulder a firm pat. Well said, Ryan. Now, let's see if you can put that into practice. Your final test starts now. Ryan's brows furrowed. Final test. Michelle grinned. We're about to give you a guest who will test everything you've learned. The question is, are you ready? Ryan straightened, determination settling in his chest. I'm ready. Ryan returned to the front desk, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. He knew this was his final test, and he wasn't going to fail. He took a deep breath, straightened his posture, and waited for his mystery guest to arrive. Moments later, the glass doors of the Majestic Hotel swung open, and in walked an elderly woman dressed in simple yet elegant attire. She moved slowly, her frail hands gripping the handle of a small rolling suitcase. Her silver hair was neatly pinned up, and her eyes held a quiet wisdom. Ryan immediately stepped forward with a warm smile. Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to the Majestic Hotel. How can I assist you today? The woman peered up at him, her expression unreadable. I have a reservation, dear, but I must warn you, I have certain expectations. I hope this establishment can meet them. Ryan remained unfazed. Of course, ma'am. We strive to provide the best service possible. May I have your name to check your reservation? She handed him her ID. Margaret Langston. Ryan's fingers paused over the keyboard. That name sounded oddly familiar. He quickly glanced at Jason and Michelle, who were standing nearby, observing the exchange. Jason gave him a subtle nod, confirming what Ryan suspected. This woman wasn't just any guest. Keeping his composure, Ryan processed her check-in efficiently, all while making polite conversation. "Mrs. Langston, do you have any special requests for your stay? We'd be happy to accommodate you." Her lips curled into a small smile. "Well, since you ask, I do enjoy a good cup of chamomile tea before bed, and I prefer my room to be on a quieter floor." "Consider it done," Ryan said without hesitation. "I'll personally ensure you have the perfect room." Margaret studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Good. Most places just hand me a key and send me on my way. But you're different." Ryan felt a flicker of pride. "Every guest deserves to be treated with care and respect, ma'am. Please allow me to escort you to your suite." As he guided her to the elevator, Margaret glanced over her shoulder at Michelle and Jason. "You trained him well." Michelle chuckled. "Oh, he trained himself. We just gave him the opportunity." Once inside the suite, Ryan ensured Margaret was comfortable, personally adjusting the pillows and pouring her tea. Just as he was about to leave, she called out, "Young man." He turned. "Yes, ma'am." She smiled. "I own this hotel." Ryan's heart nearly stopped. His mind raced as everything clicked into place. Margaret Langston, the name, the presence, the test. He had been serving the most important guest of all. She continued, "I often visit in disguise to see how my staff treats guests when they don't think anyone important is watching. Many fail. You, however, have redeemed yourself." Ryan exhaled in relief. "Thank you, ma'am. It means a lot coming from you." She patted his arm. "Keep that heart of yours, young man. It will take you far." As Ryan left the suite, he saw Michelle and Jason waiting for him. Michelle smirked. "So, how does it feel to impress the owner of the majestic hotel?" Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "Unreal, but I think I finally understand what true hospitality is." Jason clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Then I'd say you passed your final test." As Ryan walked back to the front desk, a sense of pride and humility settled over him. The experience with Margaret Langston had changed him. He now understood that hospitality wasn't just about checking people in, it was about making them feel valued. Michelle and Jason watched him with knowing smiles. Michelle crossed her arms. "So, what's next for you, Ryan?" Ryan exhaled deeply. "Honestly, I want to do better. I want to make sure no guest ever feels how I made you feel, Ms. Buteau. I can't take back my mistakes, but I can make sure they don't happen again." Jason nodded approvingly. "That's the right mindset. Growth comes from recognizing where we fall short and making a change." Just then, Margaret Langston reappeared in the lobby, this time dressed in a refined business suit. The friendly older woman was gone. In her place stood a powerful business leader. Ryan immediately straightened his posture. She approached the front desk and addressed the entire staff. "Gather around, everyone. I have something important to say." Employees quickly assembled, whispering among themselves. The owner rarely made public appearances like this. Margaret cleared her throat. What happened here over the last few days was an unplanned but necessary lesson. This hotel prides itself on world-class service, but assumptions and biases can taint that mission. Ryan's initial mistake was a reflection of a much larger issue. However, what makes a person truly valuable isn't their ability to avoid mistakes. It's their willingness to learn from them. She turned to Ryan. "You could have given up. You could have made excuses. Instead, you chose to improve. That is the kind of employee I want leading my team." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ryan blinked in shock. "Ma'am." Margaret smiled. "As of today, I'm promoting you to guest relations manager. Your job will be to ensure that every single person who walks through these doors is treated with dignity and respect. You'll train new employees, correct lapses in service, and set the standard for excellence." Ryan's heart pounded. This was beyond anything he had expected. I don't know what to say." Michelle grinned. "Thank you is a good start." Margaret chuckled. "Indeed." Ryan swallowed hard, then looked Margaret in the eye. "Thank you, ma'am. I won't let you down." She nodded. "See that you don't. Now, let's talk about how we can make the majestic hotel the best in the world." As the staff erupted into applause, Ryan realized something important. This wasn't just about a job. It was about leadership, growth, and the power of second chances. Ryan stood in front of the mirror in his newly assigned office, adjusting the sleek nameplate on his desk. Ryan Cart, Guest Relations Manager. It still felt surreal. Just days ago, he had been another front desk employee, unaware of how much one mistake could change his entire career. A soft knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Sarah, his former co-worker from the front desk. She peeked inside with a teasing smile. "Look at you, all fancy now. How does it feel?" Ryan chuckled. "Strange, but good. And terrifying." Sarah walked in and leaned against the desk. "You earned it, Ryan. I know it didn't start great, but you showed everyone you could change. And now, you're in a position to make real improvements here." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly what I want to do. But I also know I have a lot to learn." Before Sarah could respond, Michelle Buteau and Jason entered the office. Ryan immediately stood up. "Ms. Buteau, Mr. Fields." Michelle grinned. "Oh, come on. After all we've been through, just call me Michelle." Jason chuckled. "And Jason works just fine." Ryan relaxed a little, though their presence still carried weight. "What can I do for you?" Michelle exchanged a glance with Jason before speaking. "Actually, we wanted to do something for you." Ryan frowned slightly. "For me?" Jason nodded. "Consider it an opportunity. We've seen how quickly you adapted, how you took accountability and transformed. We think there's real leadership potential in you. So, we're offering you an exclusive training program, one that will take you through elite hospitality training, leadership development, and business management." Ryan's eyes widened. "Wait, seriously?" Michelle smirked. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Ryan let out a stunned breath. "That's incredible. But why me?" Jason placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "Because you have what many people lack, the ability to recognize your flaws and actually do something about them. That's the kind of person who can lead." Ryan felt a surge of gratitude. I don't know what to say." Michelle winked. "Say yes." Ryan let out a small laugh, then nodded. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." Sarah clapped, and Michelle and Jason exchanged satisfied smiles. Ryan took a deep breath as he stood at the entrance of the hotel's grand ballroom, where the staff had gathered for a special meeting. He glanced down at his notes, but his mind was already made up. He was going to speak from the heart. Michelle Buteau and Jason Fields sat in the front row, nodding at him encouragingly. He straightened his shoulders and stepped forward. "Thank you all for being here today. I know some of you are wondering why this meeting was called, so let me start with a confession. Just a short time ago, I made a terrible mistake. I judged a guest unfairly based on appearance, and I let my assumptions dictate my actions. It was wrong, and I deeply regret it." The room was silent as everyone listened. Ryan continued, "But through that mistake, I was given an opportunity, not just to correct my actions, but to grow into someone better. Thanks to Michelle and Jason, I've learned that true hospitality isn't about who we think someone is. It's about treating every single person with respect and dignity, no matter what." He paused, scanning the crowd. "I want to take what I've learned and implement real changes here. Our hotel is known for luxury, but from now on, I want it to be known for something even greater. Our culture of respect, kindness, and exceptional service for everyone. That starts with us. It starts today." A ripple of murmurs spread through the staff, and then, one by one, they started clapping. The applause grew louder until the entire room was cheering. Michelle stood up and gave him a thumbs up. "Well said, Ryan. And I think you're just getting started." Jason stepped beside him. "This is what leadership looks like." Ryan felt a surge of pride. The journey hadn't been easy, but had been worth it. He looked at his team, his new mentors, and his fresh start. This was more than a promotion. It was a transformation, and he was ready to embrace every challenge ahead. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community. See you in the next one.